Hi everyone, in the last video we set up some basic leg movement, which you can see here, this sort of back and forth movement. And now what we're going to do is go in and refine this a bit. So I'm going to start off with the sort of the body position and the foot position halfway in between each of my main frames. So this is going to be frame 9 and frame 25. And once again, these frames are going to be the same pose on both sides, for both sides of the character, except that the position of the legs and the arms are going to be reversed, okay, from one another. So in this first in-between, on frame 9, we can see that as we scrub through the timeline, the left foot is at the front, and it moves back like this, right? So frame 9 is called the passing position. So this is where the legs basically pass one another. So at this point, we want the left foot to be flat on the ground, and we want the right foot to be sort of up in the air a little bit. Okay, so the character's standing on their left foot at this point. So on frame 9, I'm going to set the rotate value and the heel up value for the left foot to 0. So rotate needs to be reset to 0, and the heel up value is also going to be set to 0. So what this does is it places the foot flat on the ground, like that. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the body control, and I'm going to move the character's body up. And I want this to be up to the point, or to a height, where the left leg is almost straight, like this. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is grab the right foot control, and I'm going to lift this up a bit off the ground. And what I want to do is set or adjust the rotation around so that the foot's sort of, the toe's kind of pointing towards the floor a little bit. So it's sort of pointing down. And if you want, what you can do is grab the heel up value just here and just dial it up. Actually reset that to 0 like that. And we can grab the, let's see, we'll grab the toe tap value just here, toe tap control. And what I want to do is push it, I want to increase the number a little bit. What that's going to do is push the toe down slightly. So it's bending the foot downwards. So as this foot moves up and forward in this direction, the toe is going to kind of drag behind, like that. Now you can increase the value of that to really kind of sell that if you want. So you can actually have the toe really bent down. Okay, so just do something that sort of looks good for your character, because each of your characters are rigged slightly differently. Okay, so I'm going to set the toe tap to just a rounded number 35, looks about right. Okay, now here's the issue. Because we haven't really done anything with the toe tap yet, because I've changed the value of it to 9, it's going to remain like that all the way through the animation. So what I need to do is go back to frame 1. Okay, and if we have a look at the number there, you can see that toe tap has changed to 1.2. What I want this to be is 0. So I'm just going to go back to frame 1 and reset toe tap to 0. I'm then going to do the same thing on frame 17. Okay, you can see that on frame 17 currently the toe tap is still set to 35. So I'm going to set that to 0 as well. Alright, and you'll notice obviously that 35 is, the foot is a lot further forward. So if I scrub through the timeline now, you can see that the foot, and I'm watching this foot here, as I scrub through the timeline you can see that the toe starts off sort of on the ground, then as the foot lifts, the toe bends down as though it's got a bit of weight to it. And then as we get to 17, you can see that the toe is straightened. Now here's the issue. On frame 17, this foot should actually be, the heel should be on the ground, just here. So our Y value for position has not been keyframed properly. Okay, so it's okay there. And it's missing some keyframes, which is why it's floating in the air. So on frame 17, I'm going to set the Y value for the right foot handle. You can see here it's keyframed. Currently here it's at 0.02, so we need to keyframe this. So I'm going to set that to 0 on frame 1. Okay, on frame 17 I'm going to set it to 0. And then on 35, frame 33, I'm going to set it to 0 as well. Okay, I think we missed that one in the last video. Okay, so it's always handy to go and kind of scrub through your timeline for each section that you do. And you can always go back and fix things up if you find that you've missed something. Okay. So we're now getting this vertical movement on the body. We need to repeat that over here on frame 25. So I'm going to select the body control just here. And what I'm going to do is copy the number for the translate Y for frame 9. That's where we've moved it up. So I'll just copy that. We can also come back and copy the translate Z as well in a minute. But I'm going to go across to 25, frame 25, and I'm going to paste that number in. And then hit enter. That's going to lift this up. Then I'll go back to frame 9 again and copy, in this case, the translate Z. And then go back to 25 and paste translate Z in. Okay, just to make sure that they're the same. Okay. So on 25, we need to do the same thing as we did with frame 9, where we need to get the right foot flat on the floor, and we need to get this foot kind of lifted up and bent a bit. So I'm going to go to frame 25, like this. I'm going to select the right foot control. I'm going to set the rotate value to 0. That's going to flatten the right foot out. So we're looking at this one now. I need to set the heel up value to 0. So that the heel is flat on the floor as well. Okay, so between 17 and 25, the foot basically comes down and then flattens, so it's standing on the floor. All right, now what we need to do with the left foot is lift it up in the air like this one is. Okay, so I'm going to grab the left foot, I'm going to come across to 25. I'm going to reset the heel heel up value to 0, like this. That's just going to drop the heel down. I'm going to grab the move tool and just lift this up a little bit, and then I'm going to point the foot down using the rotate tool, like this. And then I'm going to use the toe tap number, and I'm going to dial that up so that the toe kind of hangs down a bit. Now I can swap between frame 9 and 25, just go back and forth to kind of refine the position of this. So if I have a look at 9, like this, I can see that back foot there. Okay, if I place my little menu at the corner of where the heel and the controller are, just there, and then I go back to 25, what I can do is use the move tool and position this controller in the same spot. So we're kind of getting roughly the same position for both feet. Okay. Now once again, you can see here as I go back down the timeline, this foot's no longer flat on the floor again. So what I need to do is make sure that my Y translate value is set to 0 on my keyframes. So translate Y on frame 1 for the left foot should be 0. On frame 9, it should be 0 here, and this is where it's starting to lift. Okay. Also at this point, the toe tap needs to be set to 0 as well. So on frame 1, the toe tap for the left foot should be 0. And this is just going to stop the toe from kind of flopping through the floor like this. Same thing here on frame 9. Okay, on 17, okay, the translate Y needs to be dropped down a bit so that the foot's on the floor, like this. Now at this point we're also losing a bit of the, we've got a heel up value just here, but it's not, doesn't seem to be really taking into account the foot. or the toe control. So the toe tap is, you can see here on this frame 17 keyframe, the toe tap here is 13, so I need to set that to 0 so that the toe is flat on the floor. And then we come across and the toe is lifted, foot's lifted, the toe's drooping, and then back down to here on 33, the translate Y needs to go back to 0, like that, and the toe tap needs to be set back to 0 as well. So that way the foot is straight. So if we have a look at frame 1 in comparison to frame 33, you can see that there's no movement. So those two frames are now exactly the same again. All right, on frame 9, what we should see between 9 and 25, if we switch between them, is basically just the 2 feet swapping positions, like that. And these might not be exact, okay? Don't worry if they're not exactly the same as one another, okay? But that's pretty close. And then 17, we should see what you've got here. And this is pretty much a copy of what we're seeing on frame 1, except the feet are reversed on frame 17. Okay. So let's have a quick look at that in action. So you can see now we're starting to get a slightly better cycle with the feet. Okay, they're not perfect, and there still needs to be a lot more weight placed into them, but it's starting to get there. All right, I'm going to push through in this video and do sort of the next bit, which is sort of in between frames after the contact position. So this is, this is the passing position. All right, this is where the feet pass one another during the step. Okay, the contact position is where the front foot contacts the floor. In this case, where this yellow line is. So that's contacting just there. So once the heel contacts, the next keyframe that we add, the next pose, needs to be the foot touching the floor. Okay, so that's going to occur here on frame 5. So it's halfway between 1 and 9. So just here on frame 5, what I'm going to do is place the rotation value of this controller back to 0. So that's going to be the rotate X. I'm going to set that to 0. So the foot is flat on the floor. So we now get this foot kind of planting and then the character lifting up. Like that. Okay, now we need to do the same thing for the right foot when the right foot's at its contact position, which is at frame 17. So there's the contact point. So we need to go to the next position that we want to use, which is 21. And we need to set the rotate value of our right foot down to 0. Like that. So that's now going to be planting on the floor. So what we get now, basically, is this front foot plants like that, and the character basically lifts off, steps through, contacts, and then that foot plants, and the character has its passing position, and then basically resets back to where it started. Okay. Now the other thing with your your contact point. So you have your contact, and then the character's foot will drop and kind of plant on the floor. Now, when that happens, at this point, the character is not leaning on this foot. There's no weight on this foot. It's actually more on this toe. Okay, as the character moves its weight to its front foot like this, once this foot is fully on the floor, the next position that the body is going to be in is actually moving forward a bit. All right, so that means on this keyframe, we want the character's body to move forward a little bit. Okay. Now, you could do it on this frame as well. You could actually have the character just here kind of lean forward, but you could also do it on this frame as well. Yeah, just through here. and then it returns back to its normal position like this. I'm talking about the body on frame 13. So we could try it. We could actually try it on frame 5, I think. So I'm going to grab the character's body control just here. And what I'm going to do is grab the move tool, and I'm going to move this forward like this. Now you can also move it down a bit as well. So what's happening is the character is actually going to kind of shift forward a little bit. Now it's probably a good idea to, before you add that keyframe in, just make sure that on frame 1 you actually have a couple of red values for translate Y and Z. Okay, that means there's keyframes there. Also on frame 9. Okay, now we can see here on frame 9 there isn't a red value for translate Z. So what I'm going to do here is on translate Z, I'm going to right click on that and hit key selected. This is on frame 9. Right, so that's going to lock this position in. So that way when I go back over to here in between, this position's already locked, this position's already locked with keyframes, and what I'm doing in the middle is going to adjust this position but not either of these. So now what I can do is actually bring this forward and weight it down a bit more like this, so it's a little bit more exaggerated. So now when I move through, you can see that the character actually kind of does this kind of squatting movement. So it's almost like a circular movement. Okay, we want to do the exact same thing from this point. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to right click on frame 5 and copy that. All right, I'm going to come across to 17, double check that I've got 2 keyframes here, so the bright red. Double check it on 25, which is the next frame down, make sure they're both red, which they are, and then I can paste the frame I've copied here from 5 onto frame 21. That's going to move that forward. So what I should get now is this sort of movement where the character kind of lurches forward when it places its weight on its front foot. Okay. Now we can go in and kind of smooth this out later on so it's not as jerky, but that's kind of adding in that that movement or that position. So really all we need to do is make sure that we can see here that the position on this frame here is actually a bit lower than where it is on frame 5. So what I need to do is actually make sure that the position on frame 5 is lower than on frame 1, frame 17, and frame 33. So I'm actually going to raise those 3 frames, the position of the body on those 3 frames a little bit. Not by much, but just something like this. Okay. Once I've done that, I can just copy that keyframe across. So all I'm doing here is making a fine position adjustment. So on 17, I'm going to paste that in. And then on 33, I'm going to paste that in as well. So then when I scrub through it, you can see that the character's body now sort of moves down and then up, then down and then up. Okay. So it wasn't looking quite right just before, but that's getting a little bit better now. Okay. We can exaggerate that a little bit more by coming onto frame 5 and actually dropping it down even more. And then doing the same thing, copying that across to frame 21. So copy it from there, go back to 21, and then just paste that in. So you're going to get this sort of bobbing movement now with your character as it walks. Okay. We'll save that up. So we'll go File, Save Scene. And in the next video, what we'll do is start to add in a little bit more of the, we'll probably start with the arm movement, we'll get that going, and a bit more of the body movement. So we'll see you then.